In a final twist, I turned the tables. I presented the forged evidence to the higher-ups in the department, and the deputy was arrested, along with Karen. But as they were taken away, I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine, a letter hidden in Karen's bag. It was addressed to someone else. Someone bigger. Someone with more power than I could have ever imagined. And just like that, the story I thought I finished was only just beginning. As Karen and the deputy were hauled away in handcuffs, I couldn't shake the unease that crept over me. Everything seemed to be wrapping up. Justice had been served. The neighborhood could finally breathe again. But then I saw that letter. Hidden deep in Karen's bag, it was a clue to something far bigger than I had ever imagined. I had thought I was bringing an end to a simple case of manipulation and forgery, but now it felt like the tip of the iceberg. Who was the real mastermind behind this whole scheme? I took the letter and had it analyzed. What I uncovered sent chills down my spine. The letter was addressed to someone in a position of power, someone who had the resources to make things disappear and twist the system to their will. Karen wasn't just an isolated problem. She was part of a much larger network of corruption that spanned far beyond my reach. For now, though, the neighborhood could finally find peace. The residents who had been bullied and controlled for so long could take back their homes without fear. The fake arrest warrants were gone, and the people who had caused so much harm were being held accountable. But as I stared at that letter, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just a new chapter, and I would be ready for whatever came next. The fight for justice was far from over. The more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. How had she gotten so far without anyone stopping her? She had manipulated so many people, played the role of the victim so convincingly that she had everyone in her pocket. But I couldn't let her keep doing this. If I didn't step in now, she would continue to terrorize the neighborhood, using whatever underhanded tactics she could dream up. She had to be stopped, and I knew it had to be me. I spent sleepless nights poring over the documents, trying to find a way to take her down without tipping her off. I kept hearing stories from neighbors about how she'd manipulated situations to her advantage, how she had always seemed one step ahead. But there was something else that kept me up at night, the nagging feeling that she knew more about the law than she was letting on. What if she had a plan? What if this fake arrest warrant was only the beginning? I was running out of time. I had to make a decision before she pulled some other trick to escape justice. But what could I do that would finally expose her? What would it take to break through her web of lies? The clock was ticking, and every moment brought us closer to the point of no return. Just when I thought I was getting close to figuring out how to bring her down, something happened that flipped everything on its head. I received an unexpected call late one night. It was one of my officers reporting a disturbance at a house a few blocks away. I rushed over, not sure what I'd find, but I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get much worse. When I arrived, the scene was nothing like I had expected. The house was dark, but the front door was wide open. As I walked inside, the smell of something strange hit me. There, lying on the floor, was a neighbor, someone who had been one of the first to speak up about the HOA Karen's antics. The man was unconscious, and there was a broken glass on the floor beside him. His phone was smashed, but what caught my attention was the piece of paper clenched in his hand. It looked like another arrest warrant, this one far too official looking to be a fake. I felt my stomach drop. I had assumed Karen was the one behind the forged warrant, but now this felt different. My mind raced. Had someone else gotten involved? Or worse, had Karen managed to manipulate things to her advantage once again? Was she working with someone more dangerous? I needed answers, and fast. But the further I dug into this, the deeper I realized just how tangled this situation had become. The stakes weren't just about her anymore. There was something far bigger at play, and I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. The moment I saw that official-looking warrant in the neighbor's hand, I knew everything had just shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen had just escalated things to a dangerous level, but I couldn't understand how or why. I decided to act fast. This wasn't just a neighborhood issue anymore. Someone was getting hurt, and if I didn't step in, it could be worse than I imagined. I gathered a team and began tracing the source of the new warrant, piecing together the clues from the broken glass and the phone. It didn't take long before we uncovered something shocking. Karen wasn't just using her position to control people anymore. She had found a way to get her hands on real legal documents. Whoever she was working with was inside the system, helping her manipulate the law to her advantage. It wasn't just forgery anymore, it was full-on corruption. I couldn't believe it. Karen had a partner, and as I followed the trail, it led me to an even more surprising realization. The person behind it wasn't who I expected. My own deputy, someone I trusted, had been feeding her information, helping her create fake warrants, and even staging evidence to cover up the crime. The man I'd been working with all along was the mastermind pulling the strings, and Karen had been his puppet all along. I confronted the deputy that same night. When I showed him the evidence, he didn't deny it. He seemed almost relieved that it was all coming to an end. But before I could make a move, Karen showed up, smiling, as though she'd already won. She thought she could use the deputy's betrayal to cover her tracks, but she hadn't counted on one thing. I knew exactly how to play this game. You won't believe the crazy situation I found myself in with one of the most notorious HOA Karens in town. It all started when this woman, who thought she ruled the neighborhood, decided to take things way too far. She'd been harassing residents for months, making everyone's life miserable, but when she decided to fake an arrest warrant, she stepped into dangerous territory. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just any neighbor. I'm the police chief, and I happened to be the one who signed the real warrant that was about to come down on her. It all began with a simple complaint about her overstepping her authority, but things quickly escalated when I got involved. She thought she could play the system, pretending to be the victim of some wild conspiracy. But in the end, it was her own actions that led her straight into a situation she couldn't talk her way out of. And believe me, she wasn't prepared for the twist that was about to hit her. Now, the real question is, how did she think she could get away with this? And what happened when the truth finally caught up with her? Stay tuned to find out how the tables turned and how a fake arrest warrant backfired in the most unbelievable way. To understand what happened, you need to know a bit about the HOA Karen in question. She'd have been running the neighborhood like a dictator for years. From petty rule enforcement to making people's lives miserable over trivial things, she seemed to think she had the final say in every matter. Residents would complain, but she'd shut them down with her authority, playing the role of the all-knowing, all-powerful HOA president. It was clear that she had a taste for control and didn't care who she stepped on to get it. But I didn't expect it to get this far. One evening, I got a call from one of my officers about a situation at a house down the street. The residents were reporting that she was going around, flashing what appeared to be an arrest warrant. She claimed it was for a criminal investigation, which was completely made up. People were terrified, thinking she had some legal power to back her threats. But here's the thing, there was no warrant. Not from the courts, not from us. That's when the pieces started to fall into place. She had forged the document, hoping to intimidate people into submission. Little did she know, I was already investigating a series of other complaints against her. And when I reviewed the situation, I realized the one thing she hadn't counted on. I was the one who'd signed the real warrant that would bring her down. As the days went on, the situation only seemed to escalate. The residents were on edge, unsure of what to believe. Some started taking her word for it, fearing that they were about to get caught in some legal mess that didn't even exist. Others, though, began to suspect something was off. It was hard to ignore the growing sense of unease every time she showed up at someone's door, waving around that fake arrest warrant like it was her ticket to ultimate power. I knew I had to act quickly, but I also needed to be careful. If I went public with the fact that she'd had forged a document, it would only make the situation worse. People would panic, and I didn't want to stir up more fear than was already there. At the same time, I couldn't let her keep playing these games. She was breaking the law, using fear and manipulation to control the neighborhood. That wasn't something I could let slide. Meanwhile, I began to uncover more about her past. things that painted a picture of a woman who had been using similar tactics for years. There were whispers of old complaints from previous neighborhoods she'd lived in, people who had faced harassment for standing up to her. It seemed like she'd done this kind of thing before, and each time she'd slipped away unscathed. But not this time. The more I dug into her history, the more I realized just how deep the web of lies and manipulation ran. She was more dangerous than I had initially thought, and the fake warrant wasn't just the tip of the iceberg. She was prepared to do anything to protect her grip on the neighborhood, and that's when I realized this wasn't going to be over easily. As the days passed, it became clear that this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It had turned into a full-blown battle of wills. The HOA Karen had become more brazen, making public threats and showing up at people's homes, demanding compliance with her fabricated warrants. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. People started locking their doors earlier, avoiding her at all costs, but no one dared to confront her directly. She had them all twisted up in fear, and I knew that if I didn't make a move soon, it would only get worse.